A very good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Monday Motivation with Eugene Wood and myself, Sunil Osman. Eugene, should you tell us what we're speaking about today?
Today's topic is all about anxiety and coping. So it's quite an interesting topic
Yeah,
today, actually.
it is. And if you're watching this on TikTok, we thank you for joining us. We do this between 3:30 and quarter to 4 every Monday afternoon, and that's standard South African time. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to click on subscribe and that little bell notification thingy. And if you're watching this on IGTV, please give us a follow and share. And we thank you very much for joining us. We just like to get together and have a Monday motivation chat. Do you want to just tell them what we spoke about last week quickly?
Last week was all about self-esteem. So we discussed the various different levels of self-esteem and how to deal with that in various positions in your life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So you can look at our previous video. You'll be able to see that our videos go up every single Monday, and then they get shared on a Wednesday.
yes. So today's one is busy downloading the YouTube one right now, and then I've just got to edit the IGTV one, so that will be online shortly as well.
So as you said, Eugene, anxiety and coping is actually a very big topic to the point where my producer has insisted that I have notes in my hand. So I've got those notes here. But I mean, I did some research because I would like to believe I've never really suffered from anxiety as myself. But after doing a lot of research, I think that there are many more people out there who suffer from anxiety, especially in today's world. So perhaps we should first start with defining what anxiety is. And it didn't really sit very well with me when I saw the definition because it called it a mental health disorder, which makes it sound so like, you know, where anxiety actually can take you to the point where it disrupts your daily functioning. It disrupts
Yes.
the way you do things. And I know lots of people that have had anxiety, and then as a result of anxiety, land up with depression as well because they can't keep up with the pace of life. And if we look at things like social media and that you must do this, you must do this now, you must do it now, it makes people get that anxiety. So it's stimulating, it starts making them get to that point. So, I mean, I think I would start off with speaking about anxiety from that point.
We at some sort of level, we all suffer from anxiety. Like,
Mm.
I know, like, there's been times where I've been like, oh, I don't really, but the more I think about it, there's been times where I'm like, oh, actually, that there, and there has been days where I've needed to rush to get something done, and then it's like this, oh no, I'm not going to be able to do this, and then oh no, I'm not, then I start not believing in myself, so then it starts causing other aspects of my mindset to affect what I'm trying to achieve, and yeah, that can be a problem, man. It's like, and it
Yeah,
can start small and it just builds itself up before you know it, full
yeah.
blown
I mean,
anxiety attack.
exactly. I mean, and anxiety also leads to things like panic attacks, you know. And one of the things I was thinking about, because I would like to believe I'm not a person that suffers with anxiety, as you said, but if we think about it, we all actually have, to a certain extent, had some sort of anxiety. Let's take, for example, making a TikTok video or making a video for social media. You're like, oh my gosh, I've got 30 minutes to do this. I've got to do this very quickly. I've got to make this perfect. How am I going to do this right? And then you start like, oh, no, 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 let's do this now. Let's do this now. That's anxiety. That's creating the anxiety. I mean, and it takes us straight to the second part of our topic for today, which is coping. And that's where you try and find methods, or you try and find ways to solve your personal or interpersonal problems. So how are you going to solve your anxiety problems? What are the coping mechanisms that you can do to not have you have the sudden panic attack or the sudden, it's a pressure. It's a pressure. If you think about it, people often for work, for example, you'll be like, one of the things people say in their job applications, they're like, works well under pressure. What is that?
But do
What is
you
that?
really? Yeah.
Exactly. you know? So how do you identify when you're going to be going to that point of anxiety?
Works well under pressure, but comes with a lot of anxiety during those periods of time. You know what I mean? Like, so, but yeah, I suppose we all like that. Like, a lot of us, like, a lot of people procrastinate. So it's always, oh, I'll do that. I can wait a little bit longer. I can wait a little bit longer. But what it's like, what's actually happening is your anxiety sitting there going, no, no, like, you don't. I'm not sure if you can do that yet. You know, like, no, are you sure? Like, does imposter syndrome fall into that? Because now you've got the imposter syndrome is quite a like thing in an entrepreneurial mindset, but because of that, your anxiety to get things done and how you start to cope when you put under pressure is so. Coping mechanisms, how do you try and do that? Like, I would say a lot of us, as I say, procrastinate. So instead of procrastinating, let me try and get this little bit done. Before you know it, you're like, well, let me just add to this, and let me add, and
Yeah.
you've actually finished your project, and you haven't had to have this anxiety attack sort of thing.
Exactly. I mean, I'll use a silly example when you mentioned that. I mean, last night I knew I could have charged my shaver, which I used for my face. I woke up this afternoon or this morning and I was like, let me leave it for later. And before I knew it, the time was running out. And then suddenly that, oh my gosh, I need to shave before I go on live with Eugene. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Small things can stimulate these anxiety situations, these anxiety scenarios. And as we mentioned, there are different coping mechanisms people can use for anxiety. And when it comes to coping itself, it's so important to be able to deal with what's important at that time. I mean, yes, at the time for me, it was very important to get my shaving done because I wanted to be able to look at Eugene going, look, bud, I've shaved for you today. But at the same time, is it really a priority? Would I be able to carry on with this without that? What are the responsibilities and the difficulties around with me? Am I adding the pressure on myself? And sometimes you find that people add the pressure on themselves to perform well all the time, to make sure everything's done exactly on time, or to make sure they're clean shaven, or make sure their hair looks good, when actually they don't have to do that. And then they push themselves to that point of actually having the anxiety attacks, the panic attacks, the
Self-induced anxiety.
self-induced anxiety. I like that. Yes. I mean, when it comes to speaking about coping mechanisms itself, I mean, our producer Maria gave me some tips, and I also did some research on it too. And one of the things which stick out big time for me are taking deep breaths, breathing in that moment, going, okay, what is really important right now? We've got Pammy over here. Hi, Pammy, who says, I think of family and take deep breaths. So that's how she deals with the anxiety. She thinks of the family and takes deep breaths. And I think breathing is so important because we live our lives in this fast-paced life. Well, not everybody, most of us live this fast-paced life all the time. We forget to just pause. Even if we just meditate for those 2 minutes, or we actually just take that deep breath. I mean, Pammy says here that she had a lot of anxiety last year. So maybe, Pammy, if you want to give us some hints and tips on how you've dealt with it, besides the family and taking deep breaths, that would be great.
One of the questions I have this side is,
yeah.
I wake up with anxiety.
So yeah. So I mean, as we both always state in these lives, we're not professional psychologists. Luckily, our producer's got some psychology background, so it really helps us. And Maria just said now, control our breathing reduces anxiety attacks. But when you wake up with anxiety, you've got to ask yourself, how are you going to sleep? Are you going to sleep with a whole lot of thoughts in your mind, or do you wake up in the morning going, I've got this to do, I've got this to do, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do this, I've got to do that? And that is where coping mechanisms will come in. Things like exercise, or spending time with your family or friends, or finding a hobby. But if you're waking up with it, my personal suggestion is an early morning meditation. And that meditation can be a prayer. You can be saying today is going to be a good day. And as I said that, I see Tammy has said a lot of prayers and meditation help. So there we go. Meditation and prayer has been underrated for being able to cope with things like anxiety. Um, and again, when you are waking up with anxiety itself, are you ask yourself the question like, is this a productive anxiety or is it an unproductive anxiety? Is it something that I really have to be stressed about? Think in positive. Yes,
what you've just said now, man, you've just said, is it something I need to be stressed about? So this is when you wake up in the middle of the night with anxiety, it's got to be a stress-induced anxiety. So then it's a case of, okay, what is the actual problem? And try and break it down from there and see how you can resolve that problem. And then you should be able to cope a lot better with
Yeah.
whatever that actual issue is at the time.
Yeah. So if you find out, like, for example, in your life, what are your current goals in life? So are you what you're stressing about actually driving you towards your goals? I mean, like Maria said, you're thinking positive. You mentioned there are many things that stress you out, Eugene. And Pammy has said here, COVID pushed me into a place of fear and the sadness around COVID. And that it stimulates anxiety. It stimulates like who's going to die next? If I go out, am I going to get COVID? These kind of things stimulate
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
So from my big when lockdown started, I was reading the news all the time. I knew the stats. I knew all of this, and I just felt levels of anxiety start to increase as the numbers increased, and
Yeah.
it wasn't helpful for me at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like that, it got to a point where I actually just stopped reading the news of everything
Yeah.
that was happening everywhere for long, like 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Just stopped reading the news. I've started to include it now again, but at that time, I think why I stayed so motivated during that time is because I just cut out all the external noise of what was actually going on.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Now, and what you speak about there is actually the first words that came to my mind. First words that came to my mind. I'm using my hands like a Greek again. First words that came to my mind are external stimulus. So things like media, people who are speaking badly about a situation, or I'll give you a small example. When I go and MC and I'm MCing and there's a massive around of people there, I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, which one's got COVID? Which one's got COVID? I must stay away from these people. Are you standing 1.5 meters away from me? And that's because I've allowed that external stimulus to come and stimulate that anxiety. And Pammy again says that her anxiety was exacerbated by a toxic relationships. When you have the pressure from somebody in your relationships, they sometimes push you to becoming an anxious person because you're becoming that person that needs to perform and be this perfect person the whole time, where actually you just need to be calmed down. Big Red Teresa says here, the news can be very depressing. Yes, depression. And it's bad because anxiety can lead you to depression. And our producer Maria says here, in my personal experience, I had anxiety attacks at work due to too much pressure fallen on her. And she started taking deep breaths now and then during work, and anxiety was reduced. Again, coming back to the breaths, the source of life is breathing. When we forget about breathing and we just carry on like sheep the whole time, it's unbelievable how important a breath can be. And as a person who is anxious or has anxiety, taking a deep breath is not like going. It's actually acknowledging that breath, taking it in and letting it settle in. And I feel like a Reiki master right now, going deeper and deeper and just, and it's not about taking 20 minutes or 10 minutes. Sometimes you just need one simple breath that you need to acknowledge. Teresa says here, I still get anxiety attacks due to my need to be perfect. Exactly. We spoke about that earlier. Society says you must be perfect. This must be great all the time. Your video mustn't have any glitches. And then you suffer with this perfection. And perfection is the mother of all because it actually drives you to want to be this high-rated perfect thing, which is not always possible. And yes, as Magical Z says, I think having rotten apples in our personal space can increase negativity and anxiety. Absolutely. Your circle is
I
very
think
important. Who do you provide yourself your energy with?
the title Keeping Up with the Joneses. I think
Yes.
it was quite a thing where people they do like they see, oh, I want, which just that in itself for a lot of people would cause anxiety because
Yeah.
now it's they see, oh, their life is perfect, but is it really? Because they just have other issues which causes them anxiety. You just don't know about it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like the saying the grass isn't always greener on the other side is so true because you might want that person's perfect life, but is it? You got to like water your own patch to get that green grass. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And sometimes chasing the green grass is what makes you anxiety itself, because you want this green grass when your grass should actually just be yellow and be happy with it. I mean, it's a
Exactly.
vicious cycle. I mean, the vicious cycle, which I've actually written down here, I'm going to read it to you. It goes going from worry or panic, and then you start avoiding it sometimes, which a lot of people do. They avoid or they don't want to deal with situations. And then it gives you temporary relief. Temporary. I can't speak to say the word temporary, and I speak for a living. You want to get temporary relief, but then the worry and panic comes up again, and that is when you lose confidence, and that is when you start losing faith in yourself. And then your anxiety just increases, and that's where the memory loss and depression comes in. The problem, Eugene, is that when people try and deal with anxiety, the coping mechanisms that they sometimes use are not the ones that are going to be benefiting themselves. Whether it's aggressive behavior, alcohol abuse, physical abuse, lashing out at people. I mean, I stay in Johannesburg in South
External
Africa.
forces.
Exactly. When people driving around and I can see somebody freaking out because I've stopped at a traffic light that's not gone green. I haven't gone when it's gone green yet. They get that like, come on, come on, come on.
What are
What
you
are
waiting
they
for?
exactly? What are they going through in their life that drives them to that point? And how
Of
are they
anger.
dealing with it? Exactly. Is it anger? Is it anxiety? Is it frustration?
Hmm?
And where does it leave your heart
Well, it's
rate?
being
Where does it
projected
leave?
by anger. You
Exactly,
know what I mean?
projected by anger. Yeah. Um, Teresa says here, like for us women, it's so hard as the media makes you sad and not love you for everyone is beautiful. It's that again, it's that chasing perfection. When you stop chasing perfection and you start chasing your purpose and your truth, your anxiety levels will drop. One of the big things coming out here again by our producer Maria, breathing. Breathing is so important. And the word relationship was mentioned earlier. Relationships can actually make you very anxious. If you are in a solid relationship with somebody and then suddenly they decide they're going to end it, you want to start thinking, what did I do wrong? What have I done? What is there something I did? What did I do? And your anxiety levels start increasing. How are you going to deal with that? Are you going to take the deep breaths? Are you going to start alcohol abuse? Are you going to go for counseling? There are so many different coping mechanisms, and that's why I think the topic of anxiety and coping is very important to come together. But I think on that note, let's just pause for a quick commercial break.
Okay, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Yeah, welcome back. Yeah, welcome back to Monday Motivation with Eugene Wood and Sunil Osman. If you're watching this on TikTok, we do this every Monday between 3:30 and 4:45 standard South African time. And if you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to click on subscribe. And if you're watching this on IGTV, give us a follow. So we're talking about anxiety and coping mechanisms.
Okay, while we were at the ad break, we had a comment coming here saying, any advice on dealing with anxiety with regards to grief?
Whew. Okay. So again, let's just state this clearly that Eugene and I speak on Monday Motivations from a personal life experience, life lessons. We are not psychologists, although our producer Maria has got a psychology background, so she does help us out here. So she might just comment on something that will be able to assist us. But from a personal point of view, surround yourself with family and friends that will support you. So you're not stuck in this hole on your own the whole time. Because when you're in your own, you're stuck in your own thoughts. You're stuck in your own thoughts the whole time. That is when your anxiety levels do increase, because you start trying to deal with things. And sometimes, this is again, people do this a lot in their life. They will avoid things, or they'll not want to deal with things. And then when it creeps up, it is tenfold. It gets worse and worse and worse. Part of something I preach a lot about, because I do it and I try and help people do it, and I'm still doing it every single day of my life, is healing and dealing. So how do you heal and deal? Grief is something that affects so many emotions, so many emotions. Break it down, deal with it slowly. Don't try and deal with it all at once, because then you're putting yourself under pressure, and pressure then leads to anxiety too. Maria says,
Okay.
losing a person can trigger anxiety in the form of you lost part of you. Absolutely, absolutely.
So the question, the follow-up question comes in. I've tried that, obviously, with the friends and family, pulling them in closer for support. I've been told my grief is too heavy for others. How
Meditation.
can I ask a question? Sorry, can you just comment how long ago did this start, the grief start regarding so just so that we have a bit of a better understanding, if you don't mind. Um,
Yeah.
Now, a lot of people, yes, it can be quite a burden and be heavy for other people because it's not their issue to deal with. It's your issue to deal with. And yes, no matter how much people want to help, it's hard to help. My husband took his own life in front of me over a year ago. Now, okay, so that's what happened. Her husband took his own life in front of her over a year ago. Now, first of all, my condolences. Like, that must be a heavy, heavy memory that you are carrying around. I can just imagine the hurt that you are actually dealing with. So, from my side, I just want to say I'm sorry that this is what you have to deal with. Now, I'm going to say something I've said on this show before, and I'm going to bring it up again because I feel that it's relevant to this situation. But it's a quote that I've memorized, and Sunil's probably sitting there going, "Ooh, I know what he's going to say now." But it's a saying that goes, "Our darkest moments of our lives are not meant to be buried and forgotten. Rather, they are a memory to be called upon for inspiration, to remind us of the unrelenting human spirit and our capacity to overcome the intolerable." Now, your situation is intolerable. The way you must feel about what happened must hurt, like deep down. Like, you can't, I can understand now what you mean by it's too heavy for others. You are going to have to deal with this. And whether it's talking to someone else that is there specifically, that is their role to talk to people about grief like this. If you need to go see someone specifically for that, then that is what you might have to do. If you find a technique that works for you, that when you think about it and when you're under pressure, like the other day I was under pressure in a meeting and I landed up like squeezing between my thumb and my forefinger because that was my coping mechanism while I was sitting there having my little anxiety attack that day. You're going to have to find ways to try and deal with it. The visual side of things is going to take a lot longer to actually wash that out, that bad memory out, if that makes sense. But from where I sit is a year still, it's very young in a lifespan of hurt. And it's
Yeah.
going to get a little bit easier the more you try and deal with that hurt. But I don't
Yeah.
think many people are going to be able to help you.
Yeah. So Pammy says here, a friend of hers lost a mother, and she didn't only had one sibling, but he didn't want to share the grief. Sometimes your family and your friends are not the ones who want to share the grief with you. And to answer Teresa's question, what should you do if people around you don't support you? it kind of links up to that as well. Because sometimes it's not the people that are immediately around you that are going to be supporting you. So whether you reach out for counseling, Maria says a method to deal with this kind of anxiety is to write down your feelings and thoughts every day. Very, very good. If you're not writing your thoughts and your feelings down every day, or saving, you can use your cell phone, write your thoughts and your feelings down. You're keeping it in your head, and that's where it starts boiling. That's where the brain starts working on those things. And yes, it's important, as she says, to have family members next to you, but sometimes the family and the friends are not the ones that are going to be the one that support you. You need to go to external sources because they are also dealing with their own grief. And nobody is in your shoes, and they cannot fully understand what you are going through. They are not in your shoes. Writing down your feelings and thoughts, it's actually like you're expressing your feelings to someone. Form a relationship with a book, with a diary. Write down your thoughts and feelings.
She actually
Coping
says, yeah,
mechanism.
I do that daily, even hourly. Okay, so now I like this concept, but I'm going to try and take it a little bit further in the sense that I know you're still trying to deal with it, and you're busy writing it all down, which is one way of trying to cope and trying to get that from out on a piece of paper that you can try and express it. But now, if I know this might sound strange, but setting it up in a blog format so that others that have gone through the same experience, that are having the same thoughts, that can relate to your story, might be a good way to bring a community of people together to help you guys cope together. Just an idea.
It's actually so important because something I speak about in my book Sunny Motive is about how people don't share their life lessons enough for others to learn from it. And this is a huge learning. It's coming straight from the horse's mouth, for lack of better words. So if you can help others, you can help yourself. There's an old thing that says a healer, and this is coming from a master Reiki practitioner point of view. A healer cannot heal others unless they are healing themselves or have healed themselves. And what she is doing right now, or he, I don't know if it's a she, right? What she is doing right now is she is going through a healing process, acknowledging that healing is a personal journey and it takes time is so important. Don't let people put you under pressure and say things, get over it, man. It's been a year. You can't do that. Get over it, man. It's been 5 years. No, you can't do that. You need to be able to understand that healing is a personal journey and you must take your time. Don't feel the pressure to be all right all the time. And you know what? You're going to have those days when you're perfectly fine and then suddenly something triggers off the fact that this has happened to you. Embrace it, acknowledge it for what it is, let it go with love, but embrace it and know that you are on your own personal journey of healing for the situation. Healing is
Exactly.
a choice, 100%, man.
Exactly. She says, yeah, it's the longing, the missing, the heartache. He was the love of my life. But she follows up to say, I would happily blog. I haven't looked at suitable websites, which I'll help off, no problem. But yes, it's the heartache. And even in that, and the longing, even in that, and putting, because that is what everyone is going through that's lost a suicide victim. Like, it is that heartache. Like, that's why they say when a kid wants to do it, like, oh, you're being selfish because what about other people that are actually going to miss you when you're gone? You're like, don't think of that. But that is another topic for another day on why. But from your point of like dealing with your anxiety and your longing and your hurt is important. And if we need to help you put it down in a website or a blog or anything like that, no problem. We can definitely do that.
Yeah. So Maria, our producer, says your time will heal all wounds. It's way too early for her. Absolutely. The fact is that what has happened will never disappear. It's going to be there forever. But once you start healing with it, you acknowledge it, you don't give it so much power over you. You allow to feel. This is another thing. People don't let you feel. They want you to just deal with it and get over it. And it comes right back to what we spoke about when we started speaking. It links back in nicely to our anxiety and coping, because it's that vicious cycle of people telling you to ignore it or to find things that occupy your mind, forgetting about it. But if you haven't healed and dealt with it, it's going to hit you harder. And that is when the depression comes in. That is when the loss of memory due to depression comes in. That links again to coping mechanisms. Things like good coping mechanisms are like relaxation, meditation, spending time by yourself, exercise. And if you can't spend time with family and friends, spend time with that book. Spend time writing that blog to help other people. Again, bad methods of coping would be the aggressive behavior, the lashing out, which happens a lot. You see that people lash out. And what's going to happen, and I say this with a lot of love. I don't know who you are, but I'm saying this with a lot of love, that there will always be a trigger that will make you think of him. Be aware of that trigger. Be aware of that trigger so that when somebody triggers it, you don't lash out. You don't become angry. You don't freak out at them and go, you don't know what I'm going through. The truth is, they don't know what you're going through. They are not in your shoes. And you need to find a coping mechanism and a way to deal with this situation so that your anxiety can be controlled. And let's not forget, sometimes anxiety has to be medicated. People want to ignore it, but sometimes it has to be medicated.
A follow-up to what we've been talking about now in the story is all people, brothers and family saying you could have done more to prevent it, which is awful. That brings us to your anxieties being caused by an external force as well. You dealing with your own hurt and all of that, and now you've got this external force which is causing extra. And now, as we say, this isn't, we can only talk from like our point of view. We're not qualified or anything like that, but like taking those external forces or just knowing that, okay, you caused some of my anxiety, so I'm just going to spend a little bit less time with you. That way I can start dealing with my own problems first before I actually have to deal with more of your problems. Because what's happening is they also hurt. They're also very hurt, and they're also just lashing out in their way of dealing with the situation. But you've got your own stuff to deal with first. Then you can try and help them deal with theirs. Anyway.
Yeah. So what's very hard is that sometimes when you are healing or when you are dealing with situations, you have those external people coming into your life who are trying to absorb your energy that you're actually using for yourself. And sometimes, and it no sounds selfish, but sometimes you have to do it for yourself before you do it for anybody else. Pammy says, yeah, when you are in that dark place to take your life, you just don't care. No one can stop you. Yes. And Cameron says, man, okay, this is a compliment. Man, I ended up on this live by chance, but I'm so glad I did. Thank you very much for being here, Cameron. So, you have to look after yourself. And I know we are running out of time. In fact, we've run out of time for today's topic. Maybe we can ask our producer, Maria, just to type in what our topic is for next week. But I sympathize. I'm an empath, so I'm feeling the hurt and pain for what she's been through. And again, Eugene has said you can reach out if you want to start that blog. I think the blogging is a fantastic idea because you're going to be helping not just yourself, but you're going to be helping other people. And from a personal point of view, I'm going to ask you very nicely that when you write that blog, write it from a personal point of view first, because I don't want you to start helping other people when you actually need to help yourself first. It's going to be a place where you can vent, where you can speak about in detail, but you're doing it for yourself. And you never know, and I've said this before in some of my motivational videos, you never know who is reading what you're writing and needs to hear what you say.
You might not get an audience for 2, 3, 4, 5 months while you go through that healing process. But when that moment happens and someone reads one of your first or second or third blog, then you could change other people's lives. But to get to a place where you have healed first is important.
Yeah. So Mavaldo, a good friend of mine, has got a question here. Can paths meet again, or is it just that time that they were meant to be in your life? I think we'll answer that. I'll answer that question off this live because it's got nothing really to do with anxiety and coping. I'm going to stay on longer after this. I'll deal with that straight after this because that's nothing that doesn't really link with anxiety and coping, but it does. I can understand why that will create anxiety in that you're constantly thinking, am I going to meet this person again? Am I going to be able to see them again? And that creates that anxiety level. Yes, Pam, you write that book. Adante is saying, where and how can we make that when you do this, we can like go watch this again? So Adante, this is the Monday Motivation with Eugene Wood and Sunil Osman. That's me. And last week's chat will be on YouTube, on Influence SA. You can click on Eugene's profile. On Driven to Succeed, there is a link there. And then also it is on IGTV. So this one will be up next week, Monday. Because I missed this and I wanted to be here actually so I can watch it again. Yeah, I understand. It will be up again.
All replays will be, again, as Sunil says, replays will be next week, Monday. Straight after this live, I'll be uploading last week's YouTube one, and then, yeah.
Okay. So, Eugene, I think we should conclude this chat this week. We've gone over time. Our producer, Maria, has just said that next week's topic is dealing with fear.
I like that one.
Yeah.
I like that one. I like that one.
Week's topic, yeah. Next week's topic on Monday Motivation with Eugene Wood and Sunil Osman is dealing with fear. And to close off, if you are feeling anxious, you're getting your anxiety levels up, try and assess whether it is something that you need to be anxious about. If you need to get medication, get the medication. When it comes to coping mechanisms, meditation, something which has come out big time, breathing and acknowledging your breath, not just breathing itself, acknowledging your breath. And we could speak for hours about this, but we really hope that this has helped you in some way. We thank you for your engagement and your participation.
Thanks very much, guys. Thank you very much, dude. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Here we go.
And I'll catch you in another one. Take care.